In World War II, the Nazis ran secret human experiments. But what most people don't know is that Japan did the same, and almost no one was punished. This isn't a conspiracy theory. This isn't a rumor. It was a real place, a real program. And for decades, it was erased from history. This is the story of Unit 731. The story of Unit 731 begins before World War II. In 1931, Japan's Kwantung Army invaded Manchuria, a resource-rich territory in northeastern China. This aggression signaled Japan's expansionist ambitions, driven by a military faction operating with chilling autonomy from Tokyo. By 1932, they established the puppet state of Manchukuo. For the Kwantung Army, this was more than conquered land. It was a laboratory for empire building, a place to test new methods of control and warfare, far from any oversight. In this lawless frontier, the most radical ideas could take root. One idea, in particular, was gaining traction. While the world was still reeling from the chemical horrors of World War I, some strategists were already looking ahead. They believed future wars would be fought not just with bullets and bombs, but with something far more insidious: disease. Biological warfare was seen as the ultimate force multiplier. It was cheap, requiring far less industrial infrastructure than conventional arms. It was silent, capable of spreading through an enemy population long before detection. And most importantly, it was deniable, incredibly difficult to trace back to its source. This thinking exploited a crucial loophole in international law. The 1925 Geneva Protocol had banned the use of bacteriological methods of warfare, but it did not prohibit the research, development, or stockpiling of these weapons. For a nation bent on rewriting the global order, this was an invitation. Within the Japanese military, a faction of ambitious doctors and officers, led by the brilliant and ruthless surgeon Shiro Ishii, saw an opportunity. They argued that to defend Japan, they must be prepared to wage this new kind of war, and lobbied for the resources to turn theoretical science into a deliverable weapon. The project was approved at the highest levels, but it needed a disguise. They gave it an official, benign name: the Epidemic Prevention and Water Purification Department of the Kwantung Army. On paper, it sounded like a noble public health initiative, a unit dedicated to protecting Japanese soldiers and civilians from diseases. It was a perfect cover story, maintained with absolute discipline for over a decade. But in reality, it concealed a top-secret military program devoted to the research, development, and testing of biological weapons. Its true purpose was not to save lives, but to cultivate the most efficient ways to take them. Resources poured in. Orders came directly from Kwantung Army Command. Oversight was non-existent. In the vast, occupied territories of Manchukuo, new facilities began to appear, linked by secure rail lines and guarded by impenetrable secrecy. One site, in the Pingfang district just south of Harbin, would become the program's epicenter. Harbin was the perfect location, a major transportation hub, isolated from Japan, and home to a large population of Chinese, Russians, and Koreans whom the occupiers viewed as expendable. Here, the architects of this dark project believed they had found the perfect conditions. The ongoing war in China provided the ultimate cover. The vast distance from home provided silence and autonomy. And a simple numerical codename was created to hide the rest: Unit 731. What happened behind its walls would be systematically erased, denied for decades by those who participated, and covered up by those who sought its secrets. Even as rumors of a man-eating prison spread among the local populace, the official cover story held firm. This was simply a research facility, working to protect the troops. But protection was never the purpose. The real work was offense. The goal was to weaponize plague, anthrax, cholera, and typhoid, and to perfect the methods of their delivery, all in the name of imperial victory. In the frozen plains near Harbin, a sprawling complex took shape, hidden in plain sight. Officially designated the Epidemic Prevention and Water Purification Department of the Kwantung Army, it was known to its architects by a simpler, more sinister name: Unit 731. This was no mere outpost. It was a self-contained city built for a single horrifying purpose: Behind its high walls and electrified fences, the compound spanned over 6 square kilometers, containing more than 150 buildings. There were administrative blocks for the officers and scientists, extensive barracks for thousands of personnel, and even amenities like a Shinto shrine, a library, and athletic fields. It was designed to project an image of normalcy, a facade of disciplined military life. But the heart of the facility lay in its specialized structures. State-of-the-art laboratories were equipped for advanced bacteriological research. Underground rooms with sealed steel doors and soundproofed halls were designed to contain unspeakable procedures. Beyond the main buildings, vast testing grounds stretched into the countryside, designated for open-air weapons trials. A dedicated railway spur connected the camp directly to the regional network, allowing for the discreet delivery of supplies and, more grimly, human subjects. At the center of this complex were the prisons, buildings 7 and 8. Here, hundreds of individuals were held in specially designed cells. And at the edge of the compound stood the crematorium, its smokestacks working day and night to ensure that the evidence of the camp's activities and the victims themselves vanished into ash. Inside this meticulously organized world, a chilling lexicon was enforced. Prisoners were stripped of their identities and referred to only as maruta, the Japanese word for logs. This dehumanizing term was a psychological tool, reducing living people to inanimate objects, raw material for experimentation. They were assigned numbers, not names. Their backgrounds, their families, their entire lives were erased from the official record. Every procedure was described in cold, clinical language. Every report was filled with euphemisms. This was a system designed not only to conceal the truth from the outside world, but to allow the perpetrators to distance themselves from the horror of their own actions. The logs came from all corners of the Japanese Empire. The majority were Chinese civilians, farmers, intellectuals, resistance fighters, swept up in raids across occupied Manchuria. Others were Koreans and Mongolians, caught in the ever-expanding net of the Kempeitai, the military police. Soviet prisoners of war, both military and civilian, arrived after capture along the border. And a small, tragic number of Allied captives, including Americans, are believed to have passed through these walls. None volunteered. None were criminals in any conventional sense. Their only crime was being in the wrong place at the wrong time. And once they entered the gates of Unit 731, there was no exit. The system was designed for one outcome: data extraction, followed by disposal. None were meant to survive. The camp's daily routine was one of clockwork precision. Scientists and technicians arrived for their shifts, moving through designated zones. Information was strictly compartmentalized. A researcher in the Frostbite Division knew nothing of the plague weaponization studies next door. Every detail was planned, every movement tracked. Secrecy was paramount, enforced through a combination of fierce discipline and the constant threat of punishment for any breach. From the outside, it was just another heavily guarded military installation, but inside, it was a factory of death, a secret camp built to turn human life into data. Inside the walls of Unit 731, a systematic and horrifying research program was underway. The experiments conducted here were not random acts of cruelty, but a calculated effort to turn biology into a weapon. The human subjects, stripped of their names and identities, were referred to as maruta, or logs, a chilling testament to their dehumanization. They were seen not as people, but as raw material for data. The research was organized into distinct brutal categories. The first was pathogen studies. Prisoners were deliberately infected with some of the deadliest diseases known to man: plague, cholera, typhoid, and anthrax. Doctors, in their sterile lab coats, would then observe how the disease moved through the body over time. They meticulously recorded fevers, charted organ failure, and documented outcomes under different conditions. Some subjects were given treatments, others were not. The goal was to understand the progression of illness in a living human host, creating a timeline of death. In this cold calculus, data mattered more than lives. A second category of experiments focused on environmental exposure. To prepare soldiers for the harsh conditions of the Siberian front, extreme cold was used to study frostbite. Limbs were frozen and then thawed using various methods, all to determine the point of irreversible tissue death. They measured precisely how tissues responded to freezing, documenting the stages of decay. Other trials forced dehydration and starvation, testing the absolute limits of human endurance. Each subject's suffering was converted into a data point, a number on a chart. The third area was weapons testing. Prisoners were tied to stakes in open fields to serve as targets for new weapons, including biological and chemical agents, flamethrowers, and shrapnel bombs. The researchers then studied the resulting injuries, measuring the effectiveness of their creations. These were not rogue acts. They were authorized military experiments, sanctioned at the highest levels. Requests for subjects and supplies went up the chain of command. The results, the data extracted from unimaginable suffering, went back down. The reports were written in careful clinical language. The detached scientific tone was a tool in itself, creating a psychological distance from the horror. Language softened reality. Statistics replaced stories. Names were erased. Data remained. But the danger did not stop at the compound. The final and perhaps most terrifying category of research was field testing. The pathogens cultivated in the labs were unleashed upon the outside world. Diseases were released into nearby villages to study their spread in a real-world environment. Contaminated water sources spread sickness silently through unsuspecting communities. In other tests, aircraft dropped ceramic bombs filled with plague-infested fleas over Chinese cities. These infected insects were dispersed to start outbreaks far from the controlled setting of the lab. Tens of thousands of civilians died beyond the fences, victims of a secret biological war they never knew was being waged. They perished from diseases that appeared from nowhere, never knowing why their town was chosen or that their deaths were just another field test. Back at the compound, schedules were kept. Quotas were met. The machinery of death operated with bureaucratic efficiency. Inside, it felt ordinary to those who worked there. A job, a mission, a scientific pursuit. Outside, the truth was invisible, shrouded in secrecy and denial. The war concealed the rest. But the outcomes, the deaths, the epidemics, the generational trauma, were terrifyingly real. At the center was General Shiro Ishii, a highly educated physician and a skilled operator within the military. He secured funding, protection, and authority. He built a network of units and satellite sites. As Japan began losing the war, orders went out to destroy Unit 731. Buildings were demolished, records were burned, prisoners were killed to remove witnesses. When Allied forces arrived, very little remained, just traces and rumors, and questions no one wanted to answer. After the war, many expected trials like those in Europe. But unlike Nazi doctors, many Unit 731 scientists were never put on trial. In secret, the United States granted immunity in exchange for data. Early Cold War priorities overrode accountability. There were no public trials, no prison sentences. Many perpetrators returned to normal careers in medicine, academia, and industry. Files stayed sealed. Questions went unanswered. For decades, officials denied the program existed. Then survivors began to speak. Documents surfaced. Public acknowledgement came slowly, piece by piece. Archives revealed a program designed, funded, and protected. Immunity had a price. The truth was delayed. Justice, for many, never arrived. This story is not about blaming a nation. It is about accountability. Unit 731 shows what happens when science loses ethics and power protects itself. When justice is sacrificed for political convenience, the damage lasts generations. Memory is a form of responsibility. The most dangerous crimes are not always the most violent, but the ones the world chooses to forget. And now you know. If you value uncovering the truth behind history's forgotten chapters, please like the video and consider subscribing. New videos explore the stories the world tried to erase. Thank you for watching.